Well, I'm afraid we've entered that long dark tea time of the soul, which is January, when all the Christmas booze has been drunk and you have to put away the Christmas decorations. And I've got a little job to do regarding the Christmas decorations. Well, this is the stand that the Christmas tree goes in, and I've had it some years. And my wife pointed out that apparently these screws which go into the base of the Christmas tree kind of stab into the side of it and centralise it and secure it. She said that they're very hard to move, they're very stiff, and it was leaking water out of it. And I did actually point out to her that you know, if you do put so much water in this over the level of the screws, it will leak water because there's no seals on it. It's just a screw thread, so the water is going to come out. Anyway, I thought before I put it away for another year, we'd better have a look at it. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to wire brush these threads here. I've got some of this this silver grade anti-seize mixture, which is I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is silver. I think it might be a mixture of silver and aluminium, and it's basically just in a heavy grease. And normally you put it on things like exhaust studs and stuff like that, but it's pretty. I think it's pretty good actually. So we're going to clean the threads. We're going to clean the male part of the thread. We're going to clean the female part. We're going to put some grease on it, and then we're going to put this away for another year. Actually, I wish I had a brush with some harder bristles on. This is a brass brush, and I'd rather have a steel brush, but I can't seem to find it. It's gone walkabout somewhere in the chaos of the garage. Well, I certainly had no intention of spending any brass on this Christmas tree holder, and after I'd finished pushing my wife down the stairs, I did point out the error of her ways. Bless the cotton socks. Can't live with them, can't live with them, that's what I say. Well, this is my little bench top supply of taps and dies. I do have more complete sets, but I just keep a set on the bench because you never know. I wonder what size that is. It's going to be some kind of metric, isn't it? Let's see if we can guess. Is that it? Yeah, normally you can get a pretty good indication of the right size just by holding the bolt against the tap, and the teeth will line up if you've got it right. This is going in easy enough, so I don't think it was particularly badly corroded really. Well, I'm just going to put some of this silver anti-corrosion compound on here, reassemble this, and then it's away for another year. I know everybody says it, but Christmas does come round surprisingly quickly, doesn't it? You seem to be waiting for it for most of the year, and then all of a sudden it's on you. You know, it just leaps on you and leaves you feeling half dead in January. Well, apart from avoiding the wife and her finding me some other tedious DIY tasks to do, the other reason that I came into the garage is that I wanted to play with some Christmas presents that I'd bought myself. So I guess it's a little bit of an impromptu unboxing video. So here goes. And I guess I better bring you in for a closer look. Now, I'm hoping the camera's going to focus on this. Does anybody know what that is? I know some of you undoubtedly will do. And we've got some more of them here. Probably easy just to pick up the box, isn't it? So there's one. Here's another one. Oops, a bit stiff. That one's a bit of a strange one. Now, I'm afraid that neither of these are particularly exciting, and what they are, they're actually cutting tools to use on a lathe, and I bought them to use on my Boxford lathe. Now, these are the more traditional type of tools which are manufactured from you know, high-speed steel, and these pretty much go back to the year dot, since, you know, the early years of machining. But they're less popular. If you actually look in industry these days, you'll probably pretty much see nobody using high-speed steel tools. Now, back in the old days, when you wanted to machine a piece of steel, you would need a cutting tool. And what you would buy is basically this is just what they call a blank, and it's a piece of high-speed steel, but it's actually no use to put in the lathe as it is because it hasn't got any cutting edges on it. But this is what it comes like. And what you would have to do is you'd have to put this on a grinding wheel and shape it before you could use it to cut steel. But the problem with that is it does actually take a little bit of skill to do it. Now, somebody like me who probably only uses a lathe 2 or 3 times a year, I've never really acquired the skill of actually grinding lathe tools, and I'm going to let you have a look at some of my efforts because they're absolutely appalling, but I'm going to share them with you because, let's face it, everybody likes to have a laugh. This lump of metal here is called a quick change tool post, or basically it's a holder that goes in the tool post, and here's the cutting tool. So this piece of metal here, this piece of high speed steel that's coming out, that's sticking out, when this was bought it would just have been a rectangular blank of steel. So actually what I would have done is I would have started up this grinding wheel and I would have ground the face of it away to actually kind of put a point on it, an edge that would cut the steel. And it's actually not that easy to do because it's not just one angle, there's actually multiple angles you have to create on the face of this blank of steel to enable it to cut properly. Now, if you're a machinist, somebody who uses a lathe frequently, this will be absolutely second nature. And maybe even if you're a hobbyist and you're into modelling and making stuff on lathes a lot, you very quickly become proficient at doing this, or most people do. But you know, I've tried this on and off for years, and the reality is I just don't do enough lathe work to actually pick up the skill. And yeah, most of my tools look pretty appalling. Let's have a look at them. Now, unfortunately, because I don't use a lathe very often, I was always finding this quite hard, and although this tool works, this tool's probably actually been in about a year, and yeah, it's amazing what you can ram it through if you've just used no sense and just keep ploughing on. It seems to work, but you know, it's far from ideal. It's yeah, it's far from ideal. So what I did to avoid having to grind my own tools, I've just basically been out and I bought some tools which are that are pre-ground. So in theory, these are going to do a perfect job. But looking at them, yeah, they're not really what I would recognise. I think this particular tool here with this ground lip on it here, I think this would probably be the equivalent of a left-hand knife tool for a lathe. But it certainly so basically that's the same as this tool I've got here, but it actually looks quite different the way that they've profiled it. So I've got some of these to try anyway. And the other thing about getting some that have been pre-ground, I actually thought, well, at least there'll be some angles already on here that I can follow. So it's not like I'm starting from scratch to grind one of these tools up. I've actually got something here that I can just copy, and hopefully even when it goes blunt I can just put it on the grind wheel, and I'll have some edges to follow, so I won't be starting from scratch. So there's different types of tools here. I would actually be lying if I said I knew what all of these are. I think this one with the point on it here, I think this is a threading tool, so I think we'd probably find that this would fit a screw thread. We've got a parting off tool here, which is used when you've finished machining a part on the lathe and you want to separate it from the stock material. You can part off with that, but looking at this is actually quite thick. I think my my little Boxford lathe would actually have trouble developing the power to actually drive this into the steel to part it off. Now, I'm not exactly sure what this tool is for. I don't know, maybe it's a facing tool, not sure. Now I think this one might be a corner tool for getting into a tight corner for just finishing off your work. Yeah, but again, I'm not sure. I think that's a corner tool. Basically, you've got all these different tools, but I don't use them or grind them. I just use the same tool for everything, and that just shows the limit of my ability. Now this one here, I think it's a boring bar. So basically, this goes into a piece of work. So if you're trying to machine something which is cup shaped, like hollow in the inside, first of all, you'd start off by drilling a hole, and then you would slide this into the workpiece, and then cut away the internal circumference of it to make the hole bigger and bigger. So I think that's what that is. So this tool here with its point here, it's actually the female equivalent, if you like. This is to actually cut a nut shape. So this tool that we looked at earlier, this is what you might call the male part. This will form the thread on, say, something like a bolt. But if you wanted to have like a big nut, this will form the internal thread within the nut. Although it'd have to be a really big nut to actually get this into, because you'd have to get this into the centre of the nut. These are made from high-speed steel. Now, you won't really see these being used in industry anymore, and there's a few reasons why. And I could tell you what they are. I mean, the reasons that you don't tend to see these anymore is because you do have to regrind them quite frequently to keep them sharp. The problem with that is if you've got an expensive man who's paid by the hour to machine parts on his lathe, when he has to walk away from his lathe to regrind his tools, that's all lost production time. So that's not very good, and you do have to keep regrinding these. The other thing wrong with these is that they actually, now I'm not going to say they melt at low temperature, but they're not necessarily ideal for production. If you're trying to take heavy deep cuts and remove a lot of metal, what you will find is the tips on these tools will get effectively red hot and melt and go blunt. Now if you're just a hobbyist or you're taking it steady, that's absolutely fine. You don't really have the problem because you're not trying to machine things quickly. But if you're in a production environment and you've got to make 100 widgets a day or 100 widgets an hour for that matter, you really need to be removing as much metal as you can and cutting as quickly as you can. So what they came up for more for the production environment is these types of tools here. Now effectively this is the bit that gets held in the lathe. This is kind of basically the tool holder, but the thing that actually does cut the cutting is this, well, it's like the brass coloured thing at the end. Well, it's not actually made out of brass. My understanding is this is some form of sintered metal. It's a mixture of metals and ceramics and various other compounds, and the thing about it is that it's very, very, very hard, and it's very good at resisting high temperatures. So basically you can actually take very deep and heavy cuts using these tools, and whereas your traditional high-speed tool steel would just literally, it'd just melt, the end of the tool would melt and go blunt, this one will cut away at red heat and be quite happy. So if you ever look at any high-speed machining videos, you'll see that the chips coming off these tools, they're blue, which means that the metal, the swarf, is absolutely red hot. And almost the bluer the better. It means that you're getting a nice good cut if you're kind of throwing off these purpley blue chips. If you were to do that with your high speed tools, it'd just wreck them very quickly. Now the other thing about this is these little, the ends, now it's the end of these tools here, the little brass coloured things, that's the thing that does the cutting. Now they're held on with a little torque screw, so when this goes blunt, what you actually do is you just undo the torque screw and you can actually turn the tool around. So it's got, you know, 3 edges on it here. So basically all you do is you turn the tool, you turn this little brass thing around, and then you can go away and cut some more metal again. So basically they call these indexable tools because you can turn the cutting head round on it and reuse it. And once this little cutting tip at the end here, once it is totally worn out, you don't regrind the tool, you just throw this tip away, you go to your box, you get another tip out and screw it on, and so you only lose like a couple of minutes production as opposed to, you know, losing 20 minutes to take this to a grind wheel and regrind it. Now these kind of indexable tools, I've found that they don't work very well in the small machines like I've got. I've got a little Boxford lathe and it's quite a small machine, it's not very powerful. It is an industrial machine, but it's just not a very heavy, powerful machine. Now the thing about these tools is they like to be run hard. They really like to be stabbed hard into the work that you're cutting, and that basically puts a lot of stress on the machine itself. And unless you've got a machine that's really rigid, what will happen is the tool will actually, well, it's not the tool, it's actually the lathe itself. The tool holder will bend, and that will mean that you're not presenting the correct edge, the correct shape to the work to actually cut the material, and it will also maybe tend to judder because again your machine just isn't strong enough. I've always bought cheap tools in the past, and I thought that I would actually just spend a little bit of money and try and use something which, you know, in theory is a lot better. The other thing about these type of indexing heads, and again this is just my own opinion of them, the problem with them is effectively the blunt. If you actually just touch one of these, you can actually almost cut yourself on the ends of these. They are really kind of razor sharp. But you touch these index cutters and they're effectively blunt. And again, I think what that means is that it's like having a blunt knife at home. If you actually want to cut things with a blunt knife, you've got to cut much harder, haven't you? Whereas high-speed steel, because it's so much sharper, it cuts easier, so it puts a lot less stress on the machine and it cuts better. So again, what people always say is high-speed steel, it leaves a much better finish than these index cutters. I don't know, I've not got enough experience to tell you, but maybe we can find out. So out of the two boxes of tools here, I think I've chosen two tools that are effectively equivalent to each other. I'm going to call them a left-handed knife tool, which means basically they cut when they're travelling to the left. You can also get tools which cut when they're travelling to the right, but these are left-handed. In fact, let me just show you a right-handed cutting tool. So basically that would be a right-handed cutting tool because this one has got the point on the right-hand side. So this would generally be run moving away from the chuck of the lathe. So it's a right-handed cutting tool. So this is a left-handed tool. So that's a left-handed indexable tool with a ceramic tip. And this is a left-handed high-speed steel tool. So let's put them in the lathe and give them a run. So this piece of unknown steel is going to be our victim for today. Okay, so I've just centre drilled the work and I've just engaged a live steady. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out this old boring bar that we've got in here at the moment. And it's not called a boring bar because it's boring, it's called a boring bar because it's for internally boring things out. Although it is quite boring anyway, so maybe I was right the first time. And I think that this is actually yet another type of tool. This one isn't high-speed steel and it's not an index tool. I think they call these. This is a carbide tip tool. And again, I've got some of these, but I've never had particularly satisfactory results with them. And again, it's probably because I buy the cheap ones from places like Machine Mart, because it's amazing that if you buy them from Machine Mart, they come pre-worn. I mean, they're already blunt when they supply them to you. They just don't seem to work very well. Now here's another example of a carbide left-hand knife tool. And again, when you get them, even when they're brand new, and this one hasn't really had any use, they just feel blunt. And I think the problem that these little machines have is that because they are blunt, you just need so much more tool pressure to actually get a cut. Now the tool pressure is the force with which the tool is actually pressed against the workpiece. And again, I just think that carbide tooling, it just never seems sharp. So this thing that I'm putting the tool into at the moment, I think I said earlier, it's called a quick change tool post. So, because normally it would take quite a lot of effort to actually set the tool up to get it at the correct height, because it has to be at about the centre height, either on the centre height or just slightly below the work that you're turning. So we've put this round pit of steel in at the moment, so when we bring the tool up to here, it has to be lower. It has to be lower than the work. At the moment you can see it's very high. So we've actually got to lower that down. Right, if anything, that's slightly below centre height. Slightly below doesn't matter, but slightly above causes a problem because there's no relief under the tool. The bottom side of the tool slams into the piece of work you're trying to cut. So if in doubt, it's slightly below centre height. When I was centre drilling before, I was going at full speed. So basically, to adjust the speed on these, you're just going to move some of the belts over, and it's due for a bit of maintenance, this lathe, I'm afraid. So everything's in a bit of a, everything's a bit loose and nothing's quite right on it. Now for those of you who want to know the speed we're going to be cutting at, it's about that fast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage the power feed on it. And again, I've got no idea what this is set to, but I'm sure it'll do. So you can see that the tool is not cutting all the time, so it's obviously pretty uneven, this bar of metal we've got in here. It's in a bit of a mess. Could also be that I didn't engage the power feed properly. Hey, all again, no idea. Just trying to catch some bits of swarf there. They're coming off a bit hot. Just look at the colour of them. Now we're not getting a particularly good cut here. You can tell nothing's really optimised in terms of feed or speed. So I'm just feeling the surface finish on here, and yeah, I think my metalwork teacher would probably say it's rough as a bear's arse. And I think, yeah, basically the problem is we haven't really got the speeds and the feeds particularly dialed in. I don't think we were taking a deep enough cut, so it was kind of skipping on the surface slightly. And I actually think the other problem with this tool is it's perhaps too sharp. It's kind of got the effect of a needle on a record player. You know, it feels grooved like that. Now, although you do want a sharp tool, it's actually better just to kind of knock the sharp edge off it with a grindstone, just to put a little bit of a rounded nose on it, because you get a better surface finish. So I can actually feel that in here. And there's actually a few marks on it as well, because I think as much as anything, I think that's the wear in this lathe and the lathe bed and stuff like that. So what we'll do is we'll go back, I can reset the dials, and we'll take a slightly deeper cut and have another go. So we're getting some nice ribbons of swarf coming off here, which in some ways a little bit dangerous, but it means that the cut is probably doing okay there. Also, just a little bit of lubrication always helps. I don't tend to use lubricants. It has actually got a Mystic soluble oil lubrication system on it, but I don't use it. I've actually drained it because basically I use this lathe that infrequently. It promotes corrosion, so it's better just to not use it. So I cut everything dry, which is probably another reason to use this use the Indexable tooling. Right, okay, let's stop that. And that's not too bad a finish. It's not perfect, but it's not too bad. It's a workman-like finish. That it's good enough. As I say, the problem with this lathe bed, it's a very old lathe. It was old when I got it, and it's got a few dints in the bed in various places. And when the saddle on the lathe hits one of those little divots, it tends to transfer the damage in the bed. It transfers it onto the work here. But I don't use it enough really to invest in a new lathe. It does everything I need to do. I'm not shooting for ultimate accuracy. So that's good enough. Right, okay, so let's swap that out and let's try the Indexable cutter and see how we get on with that. Okay, so we've got the Indexable tool in, and I'm actually taking quite a hefty cut here, so here goes. Let's see if it'll do it. Well, that's no problem. I think we can take a bit more off than that. Well, I'd almost say it's doing that without even trying. Tell you what, I'm going to stop that there. I'm going to speed the machine up, and we're going to take an even deeper cut. Basically, it's not taking such a heavy cut at the moment because it's going over the bit we've already cut. But when it reaches that shoulder, it might get a bit more exciting. and you can see the swarf coming off there now. It's actually again coming off in more of a ribbon, so that means that it's actually a better suited speed that we're going at now. So now it's taking a heavy cut, and the lathe has slowed down a little bit. But the chips there, they're still coming off white, they're not blue, so I think it's all quite happy at the moment. Oh, now it's actually pretty hot, this piece of work at the moment, but I would actually say the cut is very good, very good. I suspect that maybe the feed that we've got on it is a little bit too fast, because I'm getting that record player effect, but not bad at all. I'm kind of thinking we could probably push it even harder. Okay, Mr. Sulu, engage warp speed. Now I don't know if you can see there, these chips are now coming off in the blue heat. And I've got the lathe set to its maximum speed at the moment, which I think is about 1400 RPM. Now I don't know if it's going to come out on the camera. These are the chips here that we cut on the using the high speed steel at the lower speeds, and these are the chips here that we just took when we were doing the indexable, using the indexable lathe tools. And you can see that the swarf here is blue, so we were cutting at quite a high temperature, you know, blue heat. But these lathe tools have just gobbled it up, so I am now sold on these indexable lathe tools. I probably took the deepest cut I've ever taken on this lathe, and you know, it's absolutely wolf through it, so I'm well happy with that. So I'm afraid again it probably won't come out on the camera, but that's a really great finish. Just a little bit of emery paper on there, and you know, it almost come up polished. I'm very pleased with that. So it looks like these indexable lathe tools, for me, they're going to be a winner. And no more high-speed steel, and no more awful attempts at me grinding my own lathe tools, because I'm rubbish at it. Well, I think for today that'll do. So thanks for watching. Bye for now. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.